Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Siman Nun Gimal, and we're on Seif Vav. Maran writes, "En memanin mish nitmanez kano mipnei kvod hasibur." The Gemara in Masechet Chulin, the Chaf Dalet writes that the Shaliach Tzibur, someone that represents the Tzibur, has to be of age that he's not considered a kid, because that's not respectful for the Tzibur to be represented by a kid. So what is the level? The level is Nitmalaz Kano. He's a man, he already has a full beard, or at least an age of having that. Now, the Kaf HaChaim writes that he actually should have, Kabbalistically speaking, should actually have a beard. So therefore, even someone that has the age, and if he lets it grow, he would actually have a beard, but he shaves, even he shaves in a halachically okay manner, still he should not make him a Shaliach Tzibur, says the Kaf HaChaim. Mordechai Eliyahu writes that that's not necessarily a ma'akev. It's better to have it, but if not, it's still fine. But nevertheless, at least there has to be an age of having growing a beard, which again, it's like 18 or so is really the age. Now, what happens by a yeshiva ketana? You have a high school that all of them are little kids. You know, they're just bar mitzvah. They're all basically less than 18, and don't necessarily have a beard, especially if they're Ashkenazim. It takes them a few more years to grow a beard. So it says, or Letzion Chametzion Shaul writes, he says it's fine because there the entire tzibur is considered that. So it's not you take one of the tzibur, which is all that age group, and you make him a shaliach tzibur. It's not degrading. It's not a disrespect to the tzibur. So therefore, it says fine. Even lechatchila you could do that, but for an adult audience, so to speak, it should be more careful. Now, Shulchan Aruch writes, but you could do this periodically when you need to. No one is as good as this shaliach tzibur. Then you could do it. Aval be'akrai, periodically, mishevish tetzarot, after he has turned already 13 years and 1 day, and he also has grown 2 adulthood hair in the area of erva. That's already a sign that he physically is matured, and it is fine, halachically speaking, to have him periodically as the shaliach tzibur. ובלבד שלא יתמנה מפי הציבור או מפי שליח ציבור הממנה אותו להקל מעליו להתפלל בעדו לעתים ידועות. Still, you cannot say, well, okay, because you can't be a shaliach tzibur kavua, every Thursday morning I'm going to take off and you'll be the shaliach tzibur. That's periodic, you know. But you make something periodic that is set, still is shaliach tzibur kavua for every Thursday morning. So Shulchan Aruch says, don't do that. Fine. But ba'akrai, it is mutar. Says the Shulchan Aruch. Now, by the way, this is even if he's a big Tamei Chacham, still he should not do it. Even if the kid is a massive Tamei Chacham, he's the greatest Tamei Chacham in the crowd, but you have other people who are set and they're good for being Shaliach Tzibur, you still could not set him as the set Shaliach Tzibur of the Tzibur, even though that he's a bigger Chacham than the other Shaliach Tzibur. But that's, of course, that's given that you have a proper Shaliach Tzibur that fits the bill for other things as well. Huh? Kohen is fine to be a Shaliach Tzibur. You just... So you ask a different question. You're asking if he's the only Kohen in the crowd, should he become the Shaliach Tzibur? So the answer is, well, you don't want him to lose giving Birkat Kohanim. And that's something that we're going to discuss a little bit more at length when we get to Siman Kuf Chavchet 128 in Shulchan Aruch discusses that scenario, whether or not a Kohen that goes up there, right? And we had this alluded to before as well in Chot Shaliach Tzibur, that if he's the only Kohen, can he turn around right there and then and give Birkat Kohanim, given that he knows for sure he's going to come back to his tefillah and not be all confused. Now this is a little easier to do that because you have Sidurim. Back in the day, everything was by heart. And sometimes the Kohen would finish the Birkat Kohanim, he would turn around and he would be completely confused and not be able to continue because it's hard, especially when you turn around and you have like a Shabbat morning, you have 400 people in the shul There's a certain emat tzibur, certain pachad and fear, awe and reverence of the tzibur. Sometimes you get all confused, and I've had people who, that sometimes both in public speaking and anything doing public. I had a fellow that is a great guy, a fantastic dermatologist, and he insisted to do the brit on his own son. He said, "Well, I cut skin every day, the whole day." So I said, "Fine, no problem. I don't recommend it." I told him some stories that have not been so proper, and he said no. He insisted to do it, and the truth is, when he got up there in front of everyone, he realized it's not so simple. It's not like in your operation room, nobody is watching. No one is filming you. There are 15 phones, recording every move and every thing. So all of a sudden, your hands start shaking and your heartbeat goes up to 200. It's emata tzibura, the Gemara says. You have emata tzibur. So that's something that would pertain to your question. That's a sugya that we have alluded to before, and we're going to study it actually at length when we get to Siman Kuf Chavchet. So says Maran in next Seif, imagine if you don't have anybody else besides this bar mitzvah boy. He's the only one that could become a shaliach tzibur. He reads properly. He reads the otiot properly. You have some people, they go up there, half of the words they swallow, the other half of the words they mispronounce. Hashem Yirachem, it's Tfilah, instead of going to Shamayim, it goes to somewhere else. So imagine you have a tzibur like that, and the only one that could properly say the Tfilah is a bar mitzvah boy. He is good, he's proper. Mutav sheyehu shaliach tzibur mishim batelu mishma kedusha v'kadish. Best, of course, is they should become the shaliach tzibur, instead of someone else making all the mistakes and, technically speaking, not have a shaliach tzibur, and you'll be mebatel to hear kedusha and kaddish. Have the shaliach tzibur that's young and does it properly. Says the Mishna Berurah. There's one item, by the way, that we did not mention from Mishna Berurah last Seif. It says it's talking about, of course, someone that has become shalosh yom echad, as we mentioned. This is an important thing because of Chazakah de Rava, that anyone that has become 13 years old and 1 day, we assume that they have physically grown and they have the signs of bagrut, the signs of physical growth as well. We don't have to check them physically, but if you know that they don't have shte sa'arot, then it becomes a problem. So because this is milta derabanan, anything that's derabanan, azlinan mataruva shemevin shte sa'arot beoto aziman. We follow the majority of people already have 2 adulthood hair in the area of erva by the time that they hit 13 years and 1 day. So if it's a thing of the Rabbanan, you can rely on that chazakah and say, oh, most people have it, we rely on most. And we assume that this kid also has grown those signs of adulthood. But if it's something d'oraita, for instance, you want him to read Parashat Zachor or Kiddush of Leil Shabbat, which is d'oraita, and you want him to be the one that says Kiddush for the whole family, that's already something d'oraita. You don't rely on Chazakah unless you have made sure that he has physically shown the signs of bagrut, of adulthood, and then you can rely on it. So says Maran in Seif Het, Misheino Baal Zakan, someone that can't grow a beard. There are people who can't grow a beard, right? So someone that's not growing a beard, Kol shenikar bo shehigia lichlal shanim shraui leitmalot zkano, mitmalet zkano karinan. It's not something that has to do with actual beard. It has to do something with maturity and the kavod of the tzibur. You don't want to put a kid to be the agency of the tzibur. But if you have somebody that is an adult, everyone knows when he goes up there, everyone knows that he's an adult. So he can't grow a beard. It's not an issue. As long as he is gotten to the age that equivalent of that age by a regular person would have a beard. Hilkach ben 20 shana, af al pi she'en lo zakan memanin oto. A 20-year-old already, you could put him as shliach tzibur even if he does not have zakan. Im haya lo zakano, im haya lo zakan afilu me'at, karina ben itpalel zakano im hu meben shemora esre ulmala. And if he has, that's for if he doesn't have any beard, 20 years old. But if he has a little beard and he's already 18, 18 is the age that's considered nitpalel zakano, given that he has some beard. Fine. Says the Mishna Berurah, if you take a look, she'en lo zakan, a person that doesn't have, can't grow a beard, lefi girsat ha'Gemara b'Masechet Sofrim perek Yudalet, it will be יהיה תלוי דין זה בדין מינוי הסריס המבואר בסעיף זה. Now we're going to discuss in next Seif in Shulchan Aruch. What about a saris? A saris is a person that doesn't have manhood, and because of that, his hormonal reactions in the body is very different. Doesn't have testosterone. He doesn't grow a beard at all. He's never going to grow a beard, right? He'll never have beard in his life. So what do you do with that? Says the Gra that this Seif Het is very much interconnected with Seif Tet. So let's see Seif Tet. Saris, yesh omrim shemutar le'marato im hu ben 20. Maran writes that the Saris, if he's 20 years old already, there are those who say, even though that this guy will never have beard, as long as he has matured to the amount of years, the age that people refer to a man as a adult, right? A 20-year-old is already considered, for sure, according to everyone, is considered an adult. So a 20-year-old saris, says Maran, there are those who say you could do it and no problem, even though that this fellow individual is never going to have a beard altogether. If he is, of course, not the age, we don't know if he's going to be saris. This is somebody that we know for sure he's saris. Now this is much easier because you know by medical examinations that this guy is saris. Back in the day, if he didn't have simanim of saris, you wouldn't know if he's saris until half of his age, regular age, has passed him by. But if he has simanes saris, or nowadays that medically examined saris, then by 20 you could already let him be the shaliach tzibur. And he says, Marshal b'chulin katav she'en lemanot saris tegnai hu letzibur. Marshal Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli says altogether it's not a matter of maturity here. A saris, because he has differences in his body that is not considered a normal person in that aspect. Even though that, again, he's mature individual, he could be a very smart, mature man, is not considered a proper representation, says the Marshal, of the Tzibur. So he says, don't do it. Maran disagrees with that. Maran Shchar calls it, you could put him as Shaliach Tzibur, so long as he's 20 years old. But those who want to be mahmir more, if you have a saris in your thing, it's not that common to have a saris. But again, that becomes an issue that would need a psak because of this marshal. Okay, says Maran in Seif Yud. יש ללמוד זכות על מקומות שנוהגים שהקטנים יורדים לפני תיבה להתפלל תפילת ערבית במוצאי שבתות. There are places that they have a minhag, a custom to encourage kids to participate in the tefillah. So in Motzei Shabbat, they'll have kids saying Arvit, right? Maran says, it's fine, you could find a source for that, not to go and destroy the minhag. It's not such a great thing to do, but if you live in a place that the minhag has evolved to do that, you don't have to go around changing the minhag and yelling at people. They have what to rely on. What is this? So says the Ramah, if you live in a place that the minhag is not like that, You should not allow a katan, a minor, to be a shaliach tzibur. If you don't have that minhag, don't do it because it's not in halachically legitimate minhag. Afilu b'tfilat arvit, even if it's only b'tfilat arvit, which arvit is a much less of a hayuv because arvit is reshut. Afilu higia lechlal 13 shanim b'yom haShabbat. Even if on Shabbat is becoming bar mitzvah, that is his bar mitzvah day, right? He should not be doing arvit of Shabbat because he's not full 13 years yet. Tomorrow he's becoming bar mitzvah, right? Because he doesn't have he's not full 13-year-old yet. So now let's see what that means. It says the Mishna Berurah, Tefilat Arvit. Why is it only by Tefilat Arvit? Because in Arvit, the Shaliach Tzibur is not doing anything that the Tzibur needs him. In Shacharit Mincha, you're doing Chazarat HaShas, you're doing the repetition of Shemona Esrei, that the Tzibur needs the Shaliach Tzibur. So you need a real Shaliach Tzibur. By Arvit, what are you doing? You're just saying that your Tefillah out loud, everyone else is doing the Tefillah quietly. They don't need you, right? They don't need the Shaliach Tzibur in that special way that you do by Mincha and Shacharit. Because then this is all. He says we don't have Chazarat Shaliach Tzibur. We only have Barech one Kaddish, and also there are other reasons that Yosef brings over here. But it's all kvetching, you're pushing Maran in Bet Yosef is pushing himself to keep the minhag of some places that they have started this minhag, but it's not a good minhag. If you don't have the minhag, don't do it. Even Maran himself, even Shulchan himself holds that you should not put in minor to be a shaliach tzibur. Right now, you have places that by Sfaradim, they want to encourage the kids, and they have the kids sing the Shema Yisrael. Right, the Shaliach Tzibur keeps a little quiet. That's much less of a problem than this, because they're not saying Kaddish, they're not saying Kedusha, they're just saying the Shema. That's fine. Also, the concept of encouraging kids is a very important concept. As long as it's done properly, you want them to kind of like shed their fear of performing in front of the tzibur from young age already, when their image is not so important for them. And once they grow, because if you don't do it at the young age, the guy becomes 18, 19, 20, and now he's fearful of making a mistake in front of tzibur and aberush beren, I guess, like being embarrassing himself in front of the tzibur. So they just would never do it. They'll never become shaliach tzibur. Whereas if you start them off, throw them in the water from young age, so to speak, and their fear basically diminishes and goes away, they'll feel much more comfortable to get up there and do it. So it's a chokhmah behind why the communities try to do that, but it has to be within halacha. So what has evolved that they do Shema, it's fine. But to do a whole tefillah, that Maran holds is not a proper midah, right? The Adayin, this is a minhag, arvit of Shabbat, by the day that it becomes bar mitzvah. Says Mishna Berurah, this is in a place that they do early Shabbat. Let's say summertime. You're accepting Shabbat 2 hours early, hour and a half early. You can't get 2 hours. After Plaga Mincha, you're accepting Shabbat already, right? And you're doing Arvit when the sun is already up. Tonight is going to become bar mitzvah. You're doing Arvit early. Says he's not bar mitzvah yet. Even though that you're accepting Shabbat early and Tosefet Shabbat is a thing, so it becomes asur for you to do Hilul Shabbat earlier, but still at the end of the day, is this guy full 13 years old? No, not yet. You accepting Shabbat early doesn't make him older. He's still not 13 years old. So therefore you have to wait. Tosefet Shabbat אינו מועיל לעניין שנות ימי החיה. אבל אם מתפלל בלילה ערבית אחר עשרת הכוכבים, but if it's already אחר עשרת הכוכבים, it's already past nightfall, then you could do it, מותר לרד לפני התיבה, you could become the שליח ציבור. מה שאמר בכל מקום 13 שנה ויום אחד, this time we say 13 years and 1 day, right? לא שצריך יום אחד יותר, not that you need 1 extra day, אלא רצונו ממש צריך 13 שנים שלמות, מיום אל יום. You need full 13 years, which means now you're entered the first day after 13 years, right? להפוך כחסרון מקצת שעות. הלקח, you can't have few hours left. הלקח מיד בתחילת לילה נתמלאו שנותיו בימי גדול. So once he hits the day, the full day passes, his full 13 years, then he could start, he's considered gadol, halachically he's considered an adult, and he could be the shaliach. So now imagine, let's give an example for this. The boy was born on Rosh Hashanah. He was born on Rosh Hashanah before Ben Hashmashot, before Shkiat HaChama, right? On Rosh Hashanah, he was born. Naaseh bar mitzvah. When does he become bar mitzvah? So his bar mitzvah, his birthday is Aleph B'Tishrei, right? Aleph B'Tishrei is his birthday. When is his bar mitzvah? When is his bar mitzvah going to be? נעשה בר מצווה בתחילת ליל ראש השנה של שנת 14. 13 years later, ליל ראש השנה, the night of Rosh Hashanah, he is bar mitzvah. Once the nightfall happens, right? And it's the night of Rosh Hashanah, he is already considered bar mitzvah. Not Motzai Rosh Hashanah, Motzai first day Rosh Hashanah, but the night of Rosh Hashanah. He was born on the day of Rosh Hashanah, before nightfall. His bar mitzvah is going to be the night of Rosh Hashanah, 13 full years later, right? Let's just wrap this up. There's one piece here that I wanted to read. I find it. Yeah. How about if this boy that day that is doing Arvit early, he's not Shaliach Tzibur, he's just davening himself, right? Tonight he's going to become bar mitzvah. He's in a minyan that's davening Arvit of Shabbat early. They're accepting Shabbat early. So he's davening Arvit early. So he goes home and they say, oh, Mazal Tov, you became bar mitzvah today. Right now you became bar mitzvah. He says, wait a second. I became bar mitzvah now, but I davened Arvit and said Shema of Arvit an hour ago before nightfall. Was I yotze my Shema and Tefillah? Because now I'm a Jewish adult. I have the obligation as a Jewish adult to say Shema every night. The first night of which starts tonight. So I said Shema an hour ago as a minor. I was not yet an adult. So my obligation from the Torah of saying Shema, I haven't done as an adult. I did it as a minor an hour ago. It wasn't nightfall yet, right? So Chacham Obadia writes that even though that at night he becomes an adult, halachically, yet you already, when you yotzeh with the tefillah that you daven an hour earlier, and you don't have to go back and daven again, because the chiyuv of tefillah is midrabanan. The chiyuv of obligation of tefillah is midrabanan. So therefore, already when you davened, you were chayav from chinuch, and that's sufficient. But Shema, that's a mitzvah d'oraita. You should say Shema again after nightfall, because that's the mitzvah d'oraita. And for d'oraita, you cannot rely, even though that there's a tosafot in the beginning of brachot, that maybe an adult is yotzeh saying Shema earlier part of tefillah. Over here, you for sure should go back and say Shema, but the tefillah of Arvit says Chacham Obadia that this individual does not need to go back and say it again. This is Tshuva of Harabadia in Yabia Omer in the Chele Gimel in Orach Chaim Siman Chav Zayin, that he discusses this, and Bezat Hashem will start the next Seif Yud Aleph in the days to come. Mishna Berurah.